I love testing out different sewing tools, and in this video I want to share a few new to me tools that I got to try recently. These tools may not be very new to the market, but I hope that at least a few of these will surprise you. I will start with the strangest tool I'll show in today's video, and it's these lazy glasses. Now, I initially saw these glasses first on social media used for knitting and crocheting, but then I thought that maybe these could be used for sewing as well. So what are the lazy glasses? Now, in your typical glasses, you simply put the glasses on and you see straight through them. However, with these particular glasses, they have mirrors installed, allowing you to look 90 degrees down even when you're looking straight. So let me show you how it looks. So when I put on these glasses, I'm looking straight to the camera. However, I am actually seeing my hands, which are right here. Now, the benefit is that even though I'm looking straight to the camera, but I can see my hands and I can see what my hands are doing, my neck does not start to hurt. As opposed to if I was not using these glasses, I would have to look down at my hands to see what I'm doing. And if you do this for a very extended period of time, you may get neck pain. Now, of course, neck pain is more common when you're crocheting or knitting or doing hand embroidery because you always have to look down. But I think that using these glasses could be very useful when you're sewing as well, because this allows you to look to the front, keeping your head straight while you can still see what your sewing machine is doing at the bottom. So this is definitely a very interesting little tool. I don't particularly need it, but if you do have neck pain, or for example, if you want to lay on the couch and do hand stitching, these glasses may actually be quite helpful. I would not call it a must-have, but if you have neck pain or if you cannot look down for a long period of time, just remember that these lazy glasses do exist. I got these on Amazon and I will link them in the description box down below, along with other tools that I will mention in today's video. Now, the second tool is very simple, but I did not know it exists, and it's self-threading needles. Now, these needles are very interesting because at the top you can see that it has kind of this little fork that allows you to thread the needle without having to put the thread through the hole. This is how this self-threading needle looks compared to standard sewing needle. And if you want to thread this needle, you simply put a thread at the top groove and then push it down. And this is it. Your needle is threaded for sewing. Now, these needles definitely make threading hand sewing needle much easier task. So if this is something that you feel challenged with, if it's difficult handling that very small hole of the hand sewing needle, it's a good thing to know that these self-threading needles do exist and they make threading much easier. Now, this next tool is the ironing ruler, and I already tested it out while making this sweatshirt. And now in the packaging you get two rulers, one bigger one and one smaller one. Using the ruler is very simple. You place it at the seam line, fold the hem seam allowance and then press it. The benefit is that the edge of the ruler allows you to very nicely align the seam line and press the edge of the seam line very crispy, while the rest of the ironing ruler protects the edge of the seam from pressing to the other layer of the fabric and becoming noticeable on the right side of the garment. So these rulers actually work, they work quite well, but for my particular case, when I was working with this sweatshirt, it's made from very thick material. It's 500 grams per square meter material, so it's really thick knit fabric, and the ruler itself is made from silicone paper, something like this, and it's very thin, so it did not give me the control that I wanted. The alternative for this particular ruler that I actually used for a very long time is I simply use the back of the painting albums that come with a bit thicker paper. I cut it myself in longer strips of paper and use it instead of the ironing ruler as well, and it works quite well. And another benefit of using the thick paper is that you can cut it in any shape that you want, which comes very particularly handy when I'm working with, let's say, pockets, and I want to press around the shape of the pocket, so I just simply cut it out from the thicker paper and use it as my ironing ruler instead. So this tool definitely works. It's a nice tool to have in your toolbox, but if you don't have it, you don't want to spend money, just simply use thicker paper instead. Now, another item that I discovered through social media is the water-soluble sewing thread. Now, this thread comes very handy if you need to base stitch or make a temporary seam. So this thread looks exactly like a regular sewing thread, and it can be used in either the top or bobbin. In my case, I'm going to use it at the top, and I'm going to sew the seam with it. Now, once I have the seam sewn, I'm going to dampen the cloth a little bit and rub the seam with it. And as you can see on the screen, these stitches start to melt. And once the water-soluble thread is gone, you can very simply remove the standard sewing thread, which I used in the bobbin. Now, the instructions of this particular thread also say that you can eliminate the water-soluble thread using hot iron and steam. However, when I tried to do it, it did not work, and in fact these stitches simply shrunk, but they did not disappear. But other than that, even using very little water does remove the seam. And you may be thinking, what is a good use for this particular thread? Now, as I mentioned, you can use it for base stitching, or you can use it for seams that you want to remove later on. Like when I was sewing these particular bishop sleeves on my sweatshirt, I used the gathering stitches at the bottom. Once I gathered the bottom of the sleeve, I sewed the bottom sleeve to the cuff using a serger, and later on removing those long gathering stitches because of the serger seam was very difficult task. And I was thinking that if I used water-soluble thread, this would have made removing that particular seam so much easier, so much faster, and so much neater. Now, because this tool works, it works well, so if you do a lot of base stitching or if you do seams that need to be removed later on, it's a good idea to have it in your sewing toolbox. By the way, I have received quite a few questions about the sweatshirt that I am wearing. It's made using my self-drafted pattern that I made specifically for my figure, using the method that I teach in my knitwear, sewing and pattern making course. In this course, we create 3 big projects: t-shirts, sweatshirts, and fitted turtleneck dress. If you want to learn how to sew knit using professional techniques and create your own patterns specifically for your own figure, I will link the course in the description box down below. And this 5th final tool I wanted to show in today's video is actually the recommendation from the viewer, and it's double pin. Now, as I understand, double pins are very common in quilting world. I haven't personally seen them anywhere else before, but I was curious to try it out because the viewer mentioned that she uses these double pins to nicely match seams or stripes. Now, typically for this task I use a single pin, so I wanted to make a comparison how well both these tools perform. So here I have same fabric that has flat open pressed seams, and I marked the seam allowance. To match the seams in the first example, I'm going to use a standard single pin. I'm going to put it at the seam allowance exactly at the seam line, and I'm going to do that through both layers, making sure that they match. In the second example, I'm going to do exactly the same, but this time I'm going to use double pin. Here I have to note that these particular double pins were not very sharp and they are quite thick, so I did have a little bit of a trouble pushing them through the fabric. Now that my samples are ready, let's go ahead and sew them both at the seam line on the sewing machine. And yes, when I want to match the seams perfectly, I do sew over pins. However, I try to do it at a bit slower pace, making sure that I'm not hitting the pin at full speed. So once the seams are sewn, I'm going to take out the pins and let's take a look at the results that we get. In the example where we used a single pin, the seams are perfectly matched and the result is very accurate. In the second sample where we use the double pin, the result is a little bit off, but only if you look very really up close, and generally speaking, the double pin did quite a good job. Now, these double pins are new to me tool. I haven't used them a lot, so I guess that with practice, the results would improve even better. So thank you for the viewer who recommended trying this tool. These are all the tools I wanted to show in today's video, and if you're interested in the topic of sewing tools, this is the video you may want to watch next. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye!